AITA for exposing my brother's affair at his wedding? When people think about weddings, they picture joy, families smiling, guests raising glasses, a couple promising forever under twinkling lights. That's what it was supposed to be for my brother. The perfect day, the one our entire family had been preparing for months. But I knew a secret so big it made my stomach twist every time I watched him kiss his fiancée. Every time I heard Mom gush about how proud she was. Every time I saw the mountain of gifts piling up in their living room. Because my brother, the groom, was cheating. Not a one-time mistake. Not a drunken slip-up. A full-blown affair. And the worst part? I wasn't even supposed to know that IT started innocently enough. I was at a coffee shop, studying, when I saw him across the room. He wasn't alone. He was with her. A woman who was definitely not his fiancée. At first, I told myself maybe it was work, maybe it was nothing. But then I saw the way he touched her hand, the way he leaned in too close, the way she laughed like they were sharing more than just coffee. From that moment, I couldn't unsee it that I tried to push it out of my mind, but the signs kept piling up. Late-night texts he hid when I walked past his phone. Mysterious weekends. A way he explained as bachelor party prep. And the final straw, catching him sneaking out of a hotel lobby with her the night before the rehearsal dinner. But my heart sank that I wanted to believe it wasn't true. I wanted to believe he was better than this. But there it was, undeniable. My brother was about to stand in front of everyone, look his fiancée in the eyes, and promise loyalty while living a double life. And I was stuck with the question that tore me apart every sleepless night leading up to the wedding. Do I stay silent, protect my family's perfect day, and let her marry a man who was already betraying her? Or do I tell the truth and destroy everything? The days leading up to the wedding were torture. On the outside, everything looked picture perfect. My mom was buzzing around the house, making last-minute lists. My dad was rehearsing his toast, practicing those cringy jokes only dads can get away with. Relatives were flying in from out of town, everyone excited, everyone smiling. But inside, I was a mess. Every laugh felt fake. Every smile I forced hurt my cheeks. And every time I looked at his fiancée, at the way she beamed when she tried on her dress, at the way she proudly showed off the decorations she'd chosen, I felt like a liar. Because she didn't know. She was walking into a trap, and I was letting it happen. At night, I'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the same question. Do I say something? If I told her, I'd ruin everything. The wedding, the family, my brother's life. People would hate me. They'd call me jealous, vindictive, bitter. They'd say I just wanted to be the center of attention. But if I stayed quiet, she'd spend her life married to a man who was already betraying her. She'd walk down that aisle with stars in her eyes, not knowing the truth. And I'd have to live with the guilt that IT wasn't just a secret anymore. It was a weight pressing down on me, heavy enough to crush. I thought about telling my parents. But how could I? They adored him, their golden child, their pride and joy. They'd never believe me. Or worse, they'd tell me to stay quiet. To let it go, for the sake of appearances. That I thought about confronting my brother directly. But what then? He'd deny it. He'd flip it back on me, accuse me of trying to sabotage his happiness. He always had a way of twisting things, making me look like the bad guy, and the clock kept ticking. Rehearsal dinner, family speeches, the big day inching closer, closer, until it was staring me in the face. And all the while, I carried that secret like a grenade in my chest, knowing that the second I pulled the pin, everything would explode. The question wasn't just if I would say something. It was when. The morning of the wedding should have been filled with excitement. The kind that makes your heart race. That nervous joy when you know a family milestone is about to unfold. And from the outside, it was exactly that. The house was buzzing before the sun even rose. The bridesmaids were laughing as they got there, hair done. The groomsmen were making stupid jokes about tuxedos and bow ties, and my mom was running around with tissues, already crying before the ceremony even started. But for me, it felt like being trapped in a nightmare. That I watched everyone move through the motions, the photographs, the flowers, the endless chatter about how perfect everything was, and I wanted to scream. Because underneath all that beauty, all that careful planning, I knew the foundation was rotten. I saw my brother in his suit, looking like the picture-perfect groom. He grinned at everyone, hugged relatives, clapped his friends on the back. He played his role flawlessly. And yet, Every time his phone buzzed in his pocket, I saw his eyes flicker with panic. I knew exactly who it was, his fiancée, though. God, she looked radiant, like she was glowing from the inside out. She floated around the room in her dress, thanking people, hugging friends, beaming like the happiest person alive. Watching her broke me in ways I can't explain, because how could she look so beautiful, so hopeful, when I knew what waited for her? During the photos, I stood in the back, forcing smiles. When people toasted, I raised my glass with shaking hands. Every word of happily ever after felt like nails on a chalkboard. And then the ceremony began. The music swelled. Everyone stood as she walked down the aisle, arm in arm with her father. Gasps and sniffles filled the room, people whispering about how stunning she looked. I felt the tears rise in my throat too, but they weren't from joy, they were from guilt, because I knew the truth, and I was still silent. And my brother looked at her like she was the only person in the world. He reached for her hands, smiled that perfect smile. And as the vows began, my chest tightened. Do you take this woman? The priest's voice echoed, but I barely heard it. My pulse pounded in my ears. My palms were sweaty. Every instinct screamed at me. Say something. Tell her. Stop this before it's too late. But I couldn't move. My body felt frozen, chained, by fear of what would happen if I spoke. So I stood there, heart racing, watching as lie after lie was cemented into holy vows. And when they kissed, when the room erupted in applause, it felt less like a celebration and more like a funeral, because in that moment, I knew I had let it happen, but the story wasn't over yet. Because the reception, the party afterward, would be the place where everything finally came undone. If the ceremony had been suffocating, the reception was pure torture. The hall was draped in white and gold, chandeliers casting warm light across tables stacked with food and champagne. Guests laughed, clinking glasses, the band playing love songs that made half the room cry and the other half rush to the dance floor. That it should have been magical. For everyone else, it was. But for me, every laugh sounded hollow. Every toast rang false. That I sat at the family table, watching my brother and his new wife twirl across the dance floor during their first dance. Everyone clapped, phones flashing, people whispering. They're perfect together. And all I could think was, she has no idea. I stared at her smile, at the way she looked at him like he was her whole world. It made me sick, because I knew he had looked at someone else the same way. Just days ago, the toast began. My dad stood first, his voice shaking with pride as he told embarrassing childhood stories about my brother. The guests roared with laughter. My mom dabbed her eyes with a napkin, nodding along. Then it was my turn. I hadn't planned to speak. But suddenly, everyone was looking at me, chanting for the sibling speech. My brother grinned at me, raising his glass, daring me silently. Say something nice. I stood, legs trembling, the microphone heavy in my hand. My mouth went dry. I could have played along. I could have told some harmless story, cracked a joke, said I was proud of him. But the words stuck in my throat, replaced by the truth clawing to get out. I looked at her, at the bride, her eyes shining, waiting for me to speak. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't lie to her face. So instead, I said something I'll never forget. I love my brother. But I can't stand here and pretend everything is perfect. Because it's not. The room froze. Forks clinked against plates. Someone coughed nervously. My mom's smile faltered. I kept going. My voice shook, but it grew louder with every word. Before this wedding, I saw something I can't unsee. My brother has been seeing someone else. Gasps erupted. Chairs scraped back. My mom whispered, stop it right now. But I couldn't. I turned to the bride. Her face had gone pale, her hand frozen midair with a champagne glass. I'm so sorry, I said, my voice breaking. But you deserve to know the truth. You deserve better than lies. The room descended into chaos. People shouting, my mom crying, my dad trying to grab the mic from my hand. My brother stood there, his face red with fury, eyes burning into me like daggers. And the bride? She dropped her glass. It shattered against the floor, the sound cutting through the noise. She looked at him, eyes wide with betrayal, then turned and ran out of the hall. And just like that, the perfect day was over. The moment the bride ran out of the hall, the wedding was officially over. Though no one wanted to admit it yet, for a few seconds, there was only stunned silence, like the entire room was holding its breath. Then the storm broke. Guests began whispering furiously, heads turning, phones already out as if people couldn't decide whether to follow the bride or stay to watch the drama unfold. My aunt gasped loudly, clutching her pearls like something out of a soap opera. My mom shot up from her chair, eyes blazing, and hissed at me through clenched teeth. "How dare you do this here? You've ruined everything." My dad tried to calm her, but his face was pale, his hands trembling as he grabbed my arm. "We'll talk about this later," he muttered, though his voice cracked like he already knew there'd be no later that could fix this. And then my brother exploded. He stormed toward me, his face twisted with rage. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he shouted, loud enough for the entire hall to hear. "You couldn't just let me be happy for one damn day?" I stared at him, my own voice shaking but firm. "Happy? You call lying to her happiness? You call cheating on your fiancée happiness?" The guests gasped again. Some of them nodded, others shook their heads. The room was divided, a battlefield of loyalties forming in real time. My brother's fists clenched like he wanted to hit me. For a terrifying second, I thought he might. But then he just spat out, "You're pathetic," before shoving past me and running after his bride. The chaos didn't stop there. My cousins crowded me, whispering, "Is it true? Did you really see him with someone else?" My aunt scolded me, saying I had no right to air family business in public. Meanwhile, one of my uncles muttered under his breath, "Good for you." Someone needed to say it. And through it all, my mom just sat back down, buried her face in her hands, and sobbed. The music had stopped. The dancing was over. The laughter that had filled the room hours earlier had been replaced with tension so thick you could choke on it. That I wanted to run after the bride, to explain, to tell her I wasn't trying to ruin her life, but to save her from marrying someone who didn't deserve her. But I couldn't move. My legs felt like stone, my chest tight with the weight of everything that had just happened. The perfect day had turned into a disaster, and I was the one holding the match. But deep down, I couldn't shake the question, had I destroyed a wedding, or had I saved a woman from a lifetime of lies? After the chaos in the hall, the attention shifted. The music was gone, the chatter muted into anxious whispers. Everyone wanted to know one thing. What would the bride do? I finally slipped outside, my chest pounding, the cool evening air hitting me like a slap. That's when I saw her. She was standing near the garden, still in her wedding dress, her veil crumpled in her hands. Mascara streaked her face, her eyes red and swollen. She looked nothing like the radiant bride from just an hour earlier. She looked broken. For a moment, I froze. I didn't know if I should approach. But then she saw me, and our eyes locked. Her voice cracked as she asked, "Is it true?" I swallowed hard, my throat tight. "Yes. I didn't want you to find out this way. But I couldn't let you marry him without knowing." She shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. I knew something was off. The late nights, the excuses. I wanted to believe him. I chose to believe him. But deep down, I think I always knew. Hearing her say that nearly broke me. Because it meant my brother hadn't just betrayed her. He had slowly chipped away at her trust, and she had been living with that doubt in silence. Then, almost on cue, my brother burst out of the hall, his tie undone, his face still flushed with anger. He spotted her instantly. "Baby, wait," he pleaded, jogging toward her. "Don't listen to them. It's not what it looks like." She turned on him so fast he froze mid-step. Her voice was raw, shaking with fury. "Not what it looks like. Do you really think I'm that stupid? That I didn't notice the lies, the late nights, the way you smelled of someone else's perfume?" He opened his mouth to speak, but she cut him off. "You don't get to gaslight me on my wedding day." The silence that followed was deafening. Guests had started to gather near the doors, peeking out, listening to every word. It was no longer just a confrontation. It was a public reckoning. Finally, she took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and dropped the veil onto the ground. "We're done," she said firmly. "This wedding is over. I won't marry a liar." Gasps rippled through the small crowd. My brother's face went pale, his mouth opening and closing like he couldn't process what had just happened, but she didn't wait for his response. She turned to her bridesmaids, who rushed to her side, and together they walked away, leaving him standing there under the garden lights, humiliated and alone. In that moment, it hit me. I hadn't just blown up a wedding. I had ended a marriage before it began. and the fallout was only just beginning. The ride home after the wedding that never was silent. Unbearably silent, and no one spoke. My mom sat rigid in the front seat, her hands gripping the wheel so tight her knuckles turned white. My dad sat beside her, staring out the window, his jaw clenched. I was in the back, feeling like a criminal being driven home after a sentencing. The only sound was the faint hum of the tires on the road and the occasional sniffle from my mom. But they weren't the sniffles of sadness I'd heard earlier when she cried during the ceremony. No, these were the sharp, angry tears of a woman who thought her child had just embarrassed the entire family. When we pulled into the driveway, she finally spoke. Her voice was cold. Inside. Now, I followed them into the living room, the air thick with tension. My brother wasn't home yet, probably still out chasing the ruins of his happily ever after. But my parents wasted no time. My mom spun on me, eyes blazing. Do you have any idea what you've done? You humiliated us. You humiliated our family. I opened my mouth to respond, but she cut me off. You could have handled this privately. You could have come to us, or talked to him, or literally done anything else. But no, you chose to make a scene, to ruin the biggest day of his life. My dad finally spoke, his voice low but heavy. Is it true? The room went still. I blinked. What? He met my eyes, his expression unreadable. Is what you said true? About your brother cheating? For a moment, I didn't know what to say. I'd expected anger, denial, maybe even punishment. But not this. Yes, I said finally, my voice steady. I saw him. More than once. With the same woman. It wasn't an accident. It was an affair. My dad's shoulders slumped, and he let out a long, weary sigh. But my mom? She shook her head furiously. No, I don't believe it. He wouldn't do that. He's not like that. Her denial cut deeper than her anger. Because in that moment, it was clear she didn't want the truth. She wanted the illusion that I tried to explain. I didn't want to hurt anyone. I just couldn't let her marry him without knowing. She deserved the truth. But my mom's voice rose, sharp as glass. The truth? Or your version of it? You've always been jealous of him. Always trying to find a way to drag him down. Those words hit harder than any slap could. Jealous. That's what she thought of me. Not honest. Not protective. Just jealous that I couldn't hold back anymore. Jealous? He lied. He cheated. And you're mad at me for not keeping the secret? How twisted is that? My dad finally stepped between us, raising his hands. Enough. This isn't helping. We'll deal with this when things calm down. But I knew things would never calm down. The damage was done. Not just to the wedding, but to my family. Because from that night on, I wasn't just the one who told the truth, I was the one who ruined everything. The fallout didn't end in our living room. It spread like wildfire through the entire family. By the next morning, the phones were ringing off the hook. Aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone had heard. Some had been there to witness it firsthand. Others got the story secondhand before the cake was even boxed up. And, of course, the versions of the story multiplied like rumors always do. In one version, I was the jealous sibling who couldn't stand to see my brother happy. In another, I was the self-righteous whistleblower who destroyed a wedding for attention. And in a few, the rare few, I was the one person brave enough to do what no one else would. The family split almost immediately. My mom's side rallied around my brother. He just made a mistake, one aunt said over the phone, her voice sharp with judgment. You don't air family business in public. That was cruel. Another relative messaged me on Facebook. You should have kept your mouth shut. Now no woman will ever trust him again. But my dad's side? They weren't so quick to condemn me. One cousin called and whispered, honestly, I'm glad you said something. We all suspected. You saved her from years of misery. An uncle even texted me late at night. Don't let them break you down. You did the right thing. At school, word even leaked out. Apparently one of my cousins had posted cryptic updates on social media about a wedding disaster. Suddenly, people were looking at me with curiosity, like I was the main character in some scandalous drama. But the worst part wasn't the whispers or the gossip. It was my own parents. Mom barely spoke to me except to remind me of the shame I'd caused. She walked around the house like she was mourning a death. Except the death she grieved wasn't my brother's relationship. It was her perfect family image. Dad, meanwhile, walked a fine line. He didn't lash out the way Mom did, but he also didn't defend me openly. Sometimes I caught him looking at me like he wanted to say thank you, but the words never came. Maybe he was too afraid of splitting things further. And my brother? He was furious. He ignored me completely at home, but I knew he was spreading his own version of the story to anyone who would listen. In his version, I wasn't just the sibling who ruined his wedding. I was the jealous little brother who couldn't stand living in his shadow. The divide grew sharper every day. Family group chats turned hostile. Holiday plans were suddenly uncertain. Some relatives cut contact with me entirely, choosing to pretend the wedding disaster never happened. That IT wasn't just a ruined wedding anymore, that IT was a ruined family. And I was left wondering, had I truly saved someone from a lifetime of lies? Or had I set my entire family on fire in the process? For days after the wedding, my phone buzzed with messages, but one stood out among the endless flood of gossip and accusations. That IT was from her. The bride.my hands shook as I opened it. Thank you. I know that couldn't have been easy. I don't blame you. I just don't know what to do now. Reading those words made my chest tighten. For the first time since that night, I felt like maybe I hadn't completely destroyed everything. Maybe, in the middle of the chaos, I had given at least one person the truth they deserved. That we met a few days later at a cafe. She looked different, older somehow. The wedding glow was gone, replaced by exhaustion, like she'd aged years in just a week. But her eyes were steady when she looked at me. I should have seen it, she said softly, stirring her untouched coffee. The signs were all there. I didn't want to believe them. I told her everything I had seen, everything I knew. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She just nodded, her jaw tight, as if each confirmation was another nail in the coffin of the life she'd almost had. Then she said something I'll never forget. You didn't ruin my wedding. He did. You saved me. The relief that washed over me was overwhelming. Because for the first time since I'd spoken those words into the microphone, I didn't feel like the villain. I felt like maybe, just maybe, I had done the right thing. Meanwhile, my brother was spiraling. He had tried calling her dozens of times, showing up at her apartment, even sending flowers and long, desperate texts. She ignored them all. The more she pulled away, the angrier he became. At one point, he even showed up at our parents' house, ranting about how she was overreacting and how I had poisoned her against him. But no amount of blaming me could change the truth. She wasn't coming back, and while she quietly started rebuilding her life, leaning on friends, reconnecting with family, even starting therapy, my brother was left to stew in the ruins of his choices. The contrast was brutal. She was finding strength in the wreckage. He was sinking deeper into denial and bitterness. And me? I was caught in the middle, torn between the pride of having helped her escape and the crushing guilt of watching my own family unravel. But the story wasn't finished yet, because the final confrontation, the one that would decide everything, was still coming. It happened a week later. My brother came home, barging through the front door like a storm. His face was red, his hair a mess, his eyes wild. Mom rushed to him, arms outstretched like he was a wounded soldier returning from battle. Dad stood in the corner, silent, waiting. And me? I sat on the couch, heart pounding, knowing this was it. That he didn't waste time. You ruined my life, he spat at me. Do you even understand that? I could have fixed things with her. We could have worked it out. But you humiliated me in front of everyone. I tried to stay calm, but my voice shook with anger. No, you ruined your own life. You cheated. You lied. All I did was tell the truth. Mom jumped in, her voice sharp, desperate. Enough. We can still move past this if we stop fighting. Families forgive. Families protect each other. I turned to her, my chest tight. Protect each other? You mean protect him? Protect his lies. Protect his image. What about her? What about the woman he betrayed? She deserved protection too, but no one was willing to give it to her, except me. Silence fell. Heavy, suffocating silence. Dad finally spoke, his voice low but steady. He's right. All I snapped to him. Mom gasped. My brother's mouth fell open. Dad continued. You cheated, son. That's the truth. You can be angry all you want, but your sibling didn't destroy your wedding. You did. The only thing they destroyed was the lie you were living. For once, my brother had no comeback. His face crumpled, caught between rage and shame. He stormed upstairs, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. Mom followed him, still muttering about how families should stand together. But Dad just sat down beside me, sighed deeply, and put a hand on my shoulder. "You did the right thing," he said quietly, "even if it hurt." And I broke down, because for weeks, I had been carrying the weight of being the villain in my own family's story. And now, finally, someone admitted that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't the bad guy. But here's the thing, the family is still fractured. My brother won't talk to me. My mom can barely look at me without tears in her eyes. The bride moved on, and I'm glad she's free, but I'm left with the wreckage. Oh, now I'm asking you, Reddit. Did I go too far by exposing my brother in front of everyone? Should I have stayed silent and let the wedding happen, even knowing what I knew? Or was I right to speak the truth, no matter how ugly it was? Because sometimes I still wonder. Thank you for watching this story on True Tales Hub. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss our next story that we post new tales twice a day, and each one comes with unexpected twists you won't see coming.